All right, so you've written a book and now you want to get into the hands of readers. You can either self publish or you can traditionally publish. Traditionally publish, there's a whole bag of worms with that, but we're going to talk today about self publishing. And what's the best way to go about self publishing? I'm going to go off of my experience and kind of go ahead and talk about what I've done and what worked best for me, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I wanted to change the background up a little bit. I'm always trying different things out. If you notice the different topics on my channel, different things, always trying different things and new things out. That's kind of the fun of YouTube. It doesn't help any with growth, but it does help kind of have some fun, and that's what it's all about, right? So I wanted to talk in this video. This is kind of a follow up to a video I did last week where I talked about self publishing just kind of in general, and I did like an overarching view of self publishing and what it means and how to go about it. So in this video, I wanted to kind of dig in a little bit deeper and talk specifically about where to self publish and based off of my experience, because when I first started out, I didn't really know what I was doing as far as how do you get a book from your mind down, write it down and all that stuff, and then into the hands of readers. And getting it into the hands of readers is a lot more difficult and a lot easier than you might think at the same time. So let's start out with talking about, what is self-publishing compared to traditional publishing? So if you're not familiar, traditional publishing is there are these publishing houses that have been around, a lot of them for a long time. And basically these are places that will take your manuscript and they'll turn it into a book, and they'll help. Typically they help with some of the marketing, but mostly they help with the distribution. They cover the cost of the editing and cover design and all that kind of stuff. So they cover all of the costs, and it's basically they're investing in authors and trying to get a return on that investment by trying to find the best stories and put them out for people to read. And they handle all the heavy lifting, right? When you are doing self-publishing, you're basically doing everything that the traditional publishing houses do, but typically on your own. You're covering your own costs. You're doing all of the work, the heavy lifting, all on your own. And you don't have the benefit of a lot of these bigger companies will have like distribution contracts with the big companies out there, the big booksellers, to get books onto store shelves and that kind of thing. So that's the first big thing with being self-published is you're probably not getting your book on a lot of store shelves, at least not without a lot of extra time, effort, and money. And that's kind of the first thing I want to cover, because getting your book, a lot of people, especially if you're an author, really big, heavy readers, people who read a ton of books, will focus on bookstores as the primary way of getting your book into the hands of readers. And while bookstores are a good place to do that, in 2024, they're not really the end-all be-all anymore. Bookstores are a good place for people to find books, but a lot of people are buying books online nowadays. A lot of people they might go to a local bookstore, and we'll talk about that later on. But the big chains and that kind of thing, if your book's not on the shelves of Barnes and Noble, you're probably fine as an author in general, because it takes a lot of time and effort and work to get your book on those shelves. And the sales really aren't that great unless you are with an established company that's actually promoting your work and getting it highlighted. These companies will have they'll pay extra. They'll get a little bit of with a contract. They'll be able to get their book highlighted in the front stands when you walk in the store. The first thing you see is that book. That costs a lot of extra money to be able to be promoted in that way. And a lot of these companies handle that stuff. So if you're self-published, don't worry about getting your book on store shelves nationally. Now, locally, especially if you're a small town author, if you've written a book and you live in a small town and there's a bookstore in your town, hey, go to that bookstore and talk to them, because 9 times out of 10, those smaller bookstores in those towns, they're trying to find local authors to promote. And they're more than happy to do that. I'll use my own experience. I kind of got in a bad way with mine, but I went to the local bookstore here in town that used to be here. It was right after I released the journal about a year ago. And I went in and I said, hey, I got this book. I'm a local author. I wanted to see about getting it on the shelves here. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll write your name. He wrote down my name and phone number and everything, and he said he had to read through it, and then he would get back with me about coming in because they like to have the local authors come in and do a reading and that kind of thing to help promote themselves. About 2 weeks after I went in there, I see a thing on their Facebook page that they're moving locations, which not a big deal. I figured, okay, it'll be a little bit delayed before the guy gets back to me. And then they shut down the old location and have yet to open a new one. So in my experience, that didn't go so great. There's other small stores that I've thought about going into, but a lot of them are outside of, I don't want to drive 35 or 40 minutes or an hour to get to a bookstore necessarily that's not even my local, because then it's hard to really promote me as a local author. They could promote me as a state author. This is from Ohio authors, but like, it's hard to do that. I've thought about doing it in the town I grew up in, which is about an hour away, but still, that's a lot of extra heavy lifting, and it's time and money that I don't necessarily have right now. That being said, so where should you publish your book if bookshelves and stores and that stuff aren't that good of an option when you're self-published? Where should you go? So for me, that was the big question at first. And the first place that I actually tried and I found was a website called Lulu. And Lulu is they're a print-on-demand bookseller. And essentially, they have a storefront, kind of, sort of. They'll let you upload your manuscript and cover and all that kind of stuff, and then you can sell it through them. They don't really do a lot of distribution, although I think they do have some distribution channels. But for the most part, they're kind of like trying to be a competitor to Amazon in a way, I think, but not really. So I originally had set up my book there, and I told myself at first, I was like, there's no way I don't want to go through Amazon. I want to avoid Amazon at all costs. The problem with that is you have to be able to get your books in front of people. And people aren't going to Lulu typically to buy books. It's kind of like the local bookstores. Some people will go to the local bookstores and shop, but most people, they're shopping online. Maybe it's the bigger retailers, but a lot of people are buying books online now. So I finally broke down and said, okay, Lulu wasn't working out. I had the journal on there, but there was no way I was going to make sales. When I told people it was available on Lulu, people are like, what's Lulu? And that's not a good sign when you're trying to sell books. So I finally broke down and said, okay, I guess I'll go to Amazon. So I went through the Amazon KDP program. Real easy to set up. They're pretty straightforward. It's not that difficult. The measurements and everything you have to get just right, but that just takes some practice. That's all formatting stuff. That's all stuff you can learn. So Amazon as a platform has been a good platform for me. I've sold the majority of my books I have sold on Amazon. As ebooks, I've sold a few paperbacks, but mostly ebooks. And I've even sold one of the special edition books. So, there is some good stuff to being on there. Plus, when people see an Amazon link, they're familiar with it. They see, it's for sale on Amazon. So that's a really good way to get your books out there. And you can do it as they have ebook, paperback, and hardcover. And the nice thing is now they offer pre-orders. So, for instance, GPS Signal Lost, which is coming out, I keep plugging it because it's coming out in about a month. But GPS Signal Lost is going to be coming out, and it is currently available for pre-order on Amazon as an ebook. They don't allow pre-orders with paperbacks, but I have the paperback on Amazon that on April 26th, it becomes available to buy. So you can buy the ebook or the paperback on that day. So that has worked out really well. I'm really glad that they finally introduced the pre-orders, because that was the hardest thing for me. Was I wanted to offer pre-orders to people, and they didn't do it a year ago. They started offering pre-orders, funny enough, about a week or two after I released Legends and Tales. I was like, you got to be kidding me, because I really wanted to offer that as a pre-order. And right after I released it, they're like, hey, now we do this thing. I was like, okay. So I was able to do it for GPS Signal Lost. So Amazon's a great way to get ebook, physical copies. And the nice thing about it with Amazon, with a lot of these print-on-demand services, but I'm going to use Amazon specifically because I've had the most experience with them. When it comes to paperbacks, hardcovers, they offer what is called, you've got a proof copy and an author copy. And the difference between a proof copy and an author copy is that a proof copy will say, it says not for resale on the front of it. And it's basically just a book for the author to make sure everything looks right, that the text is all good, so you can hold it in your hands and be like, okay, yeah, this is good, this is what I want. An author copy is an at-cost copy that you buy from the print-on-demand seller, and they basically sell it to you for the cost of printing. It's kind of a courtesy to authors so that you can then take those books, give them away, resell them however you want to do it, right? And Amazon, they do a pretty good job. I actually today just ordered 10 copies of Legends and Tales and 12 copies of GPS Signal Lost so that I have some stock, right? Because I was out of stock. I was out of stock for Legends and Tales. I haven't had stock for GPS Signal Lost. So I'll actually have stock for that. So I've got all of that, and Amazon's been great for that. Now, as far as wider distribution, I started using Draft to Digital, which is another site that they have ebook and they have physical copies you can have done. But the problem with that is if you're already on Amazon like I am, the physical copies, you don't get to choose where those get distributed. So they'll distribute widely to a bunch of different places with the physical copies, Amazon being one of those. And if you're already on Amazon, it kind of screws everything up. So I haven't done any of the physical copies through Draft to Digital, but I have put my ebooks on there. I have GPS Signal Lost, which is not yet available. It's pre-sale basically. I think they have it set up for pre-sale. But then I have the journal, which is on there, and it's been on there since basically release. And what that does is wider distribution to places like Barnes and Noble and Apple. So you can buy my books on Apple or Barnes & Noble as ebooks on their website, which is a great thing. But it also distributes to places like Kobo. There's a whole bunch of others. There's a bunch of ones I've never heard of before. But there's a lot of different places out there you can buy your books, or the people buy books that you just wouldn't think about that are ebook retailers. So Draft to Digital is a great way to get your books out there in other places, so that it's not just available. Like if somebody wants to buy one of my books, they could go to Barnes & Noble and they could look up The Journal by Josh Hawk and they would see my book is there. So that's a plus. The reason I didn't do Draft to Digital for the Amazon releases basically boils down to one, kind of control over what's on Amazon, what's showing up and how it shows up. But two, I have my Amazon account linked to my Goodreads account so that I can be an author on Goodreads. And every time I upload a book to Amazon, or every time I release a new book, like GPS Signal Lost is already on Goodreads under my author profile because I have those accounts linked. So it kind of cuts out an extra step that it would take, because becoming an author on Goodreads isn't a hard thing to do, but linking the books that you own to yourself can be a little bit difficult and complicated. The fact that Amazon owns Goodreads makes it a little bit easier. If you link your two accounts, I don't have to worry about anything. It automatically says, oh, Josh Hawk just released a new book. Now it's on Goodreads. So that's why I didn't do the Amazon stuff through Draft to Digital, even though it might have made it a little bit easier for distribution and being able to get the paperback and stuff out there. It really wasn't worth it because I'm really focused on the promotion side of things and the relationship side of things, because as an author, you want to be able to build those relationships with people. And the best way to do that really is being on places like Goodreads, having an author page and that kind of stuff. So I've got those things, which were more or less the best ways really to get your book out there if you're self-published. Now, the other big thing that I've done is I've had a website for the past few years, and I decided, I'm gonna set my books up on this site and sell signed copies. Part of the reason I ordered the author copies from Amazon is so that I can have a stock for signed copies. Now, a lot of people are hesitant to buy books off of websites. If it's not available on Amazon, most people won't bother to go and try for it, But there are people out there that love to have author copies or signed copies and that kind of stuff. And the easiest way to do that digitally is to have your own website. Now, I've built my website through Wix. Not sponsored, but I've really enjoyed the experience. They make it quick and easy, and I have liked it. Now, there is an investment in this. So with Wix, for instance, in order to have payments set up so that people can buy things, there's an extra investment on the back end, and it's a couple $100 a year to be able to run all of this stuff. It's not too bad. It'd be better if I made sales through it on a regular basis. I've made a couple of sales through my website, and realistically, that just boils down to growth and getting my name out there, because the more people that know about you, the more people are likely to want to buy that stuff. So, but that's another way that you can get your name out there, but you don't want to be exclusively on your own website, because like I said, a lot of people don't want to buy stuff through a personal website. They want to buy it through a trusted retailer like Amazon, because if you buy it and you need to return it for whatever reason, they have return policies, and you can trust that return policy is there. Whereas like on my website, if somebody buys something, even though I have a return policy, well, not one for signed copies of books, obviously, but like even with the return policy, that people, they don't know that they can trust that. It's something that they've never bought from before. So how do they know for sure? And I can understand that hesitancy, which is why I really focus on like the big sites like Amazon and using Draft to Digital to get it out there to other places, because those are places people trust. And if people like me as an author and they want to buy signed copies, then there's another option there. So the other one I wanted to talk about, and I've got the list over here, is Ingram Spark. I signed up for them recently because I wanted to, basically when big companies go to buy books or libraries go to buy books and that kind of stuff to put on their shelves, they will typically go through Ingram Spark, or a big company. It's one of the big companies out there that is a wholesaler. They offer large quantities at discounted rates for people. Tried that one. I couldn't embed all of the fonts in the file that I needed to upload for the paperback, and it wasn't working, because for Ingram Spark you have to have all the fonts embedded. And that's the other thing about these, is you got to be careful with formatting, because some places are more picky than others. As far as embedding fonts, I'm not going to get into like specifics and details, but like most places, when you upload a book file someplace, they expect it as a PDF for print ready stuff. And in order to upload it, you have to embed the fonts typically. Otherwise, they might not look right. And the reason for that is, for an Amazon, for instance, Amazon will put up a note saying, hey, not all the fonts are embedded, but you can still upload the file. But for instance, with the journal, because I couldn't embed all the fonts, I didn't get the fonts embedded properly. I actually had to change one of the fonts, because as I was going through checking it, well, one of them, it didn't know what to do with it, so it just kind of had all kind of hashes and stuff. So that's why it's important to embed the fonts. And if you can't, you got to hope that, if they're system fonts, typical stuff, not a big deal. But when you're uploading it, that makes a difference depending on where you're at. And Ingram Spark is one of those that forces you to embed the fonts. I couldn't do that with some system fonts. There's only 2 fonts that I had in there, and their system, like every computer in the world has these fonts. But Ingram Spark didn't like it, so I gave up on Ingram Spark. I didn't get very far in that process, so I can't really say like whether they're good or not. I would say unless you're really willing to invest the time and the effort into it, it's not really worth it. Like I said at the beginning, getting stuff out there on store shelves, as cool as it is to go in and be able to see your book on a shelf, it really isn't that big of a deal in 2024, because there's so many people buying online. And the last time, personally for me, the last time I went to a Barnes & Noble a few weeks, it's been a couple months ago now, but I was overwhelmed at how many books were there. And, while I would recognize the occasional thing, there's a lot of stuff there that is just like on the shelf, ready to buy. But unless you're really going through every single book, and some people do, but that's such a small percentage, it's all about playing the percentages. And maybe you get, the idea being that you get lucky enough, you get enough people to see your stuff as a indie author, that eventually maybe you wind up getting published by a big publisher. And then you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But while you're an indie author, while you're self-published, it is something that you do have to think about and worry about. And so that's why I kind of wanted to share this experience, because I think it's important. It's something that I didn't know when I started out. I wish I would have known. I wish somebody would have been, I found different resources, different people promoting different things. That's how I found out about Draft to Digital and Amazon and how that all worked. But really, there was nobody that could say that they had done it in this way. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit and kind of share my experience with you in case you're interested in self-publishing. You got to get a book written first, though. So focus on that. Once you've gotten to the point where you're like, okay, now I want to get this in the hands of readers, that's where this kind of comes in. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I'd be happy to maybe expand on this, add more videos. I don't mind talking about things. I love talking about self-publishing, but if things are brought up, if questions are brought up, the reason for this video is because somebody commented on the last video saying, hey, I really like seeing this stuff. More people need to talk about self-publishing. And I was like, hey, cool. I'll make another video talking a little bit more in depth about it. And then if you want to see more, you can always, like, subscribe, hit the comments down below. If you want to support me, go over to Patreon. I release stuff over there pretty consistently. I've got a whole bunch of new stuff coming up. I've got stuff I just posted on the community tab here on this channel about another channel that I've got that's been kind of sitting dormant for a couple of years, or year and a half maybe. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it. And I finally decided, hey, I'm just going to do like a reading thing where I'm sitting down basically like I would be at a library or at a bookstore and just reading chapter after chapter, going through each chapter of all of my books. So I'm going to start with a journal. Eventually, I'm going to get to start doing Legends and Tales here in about a month, and then GPS Signal Lost later this summer, so that way they'll all be online, as opposed to doing it as an audiobook. This is kind of my way of doing it as an audiobook, but also kind of being able to talk to people, because I love to talk, obviously. I think I cleared everything. I got everything out of the way, though. So I want to thank you all for watching. Like I said, if you have any comments, leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them, and maybe make an entire video talking about more of this kind of stuff. Whatever interests you guys is, I want to talk about that kind of stuff. So thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.